Disclaimer: the following episode contains spoilers for Andor Season 1. Don't go crying to your mum if we spoil it for you. You've been warned. Welcome to Podcapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. And this week, I've got a good feeling about this. That's a nice change of pace. We're talking about Andor. Cue the music. Hello there, Capers, and as I said, welcome to Podcapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. My name's Scott James Merridew, and this is the show where we talk about various geek and nerd-related topics, and I'm joined each week by a very special different guest. Give it up, Capers, for Francisco Andrande!
Thank you. Happy to be here.
To see you. Now, I will say, Capers, it has been a little while. We do apologize. We have had, we've tried to, get some episodes out, but unfortunately we had a bit of technical issues, and so that's why it's been so late since the last Halloween special. So I apologize for that. We are working to get a much more regular upload going forward, but we won't worry about for the moment. Right now, Andor. We were discussing this briefly beforehand, before the show started. It's a slow burn, but it grows on you.
It absolutely does. First two episodes, I was like, okay, what's going on here? But then it just slowly, you're just falling in love with all the characters, and you're like, okay, let's go. It's great.
I was really worried at the time. Half the problem is I never really wanted a show about Andor. I did not care for Rogue One as a film. I thought it was very well directed. I thought the cinematography and the direction and the overall story was pretty good. I just didn't care about a single one of those characters or the journey they went on, to be perfectly honest. What were your thoughts?
You know, it's funny because I'm the exact opposite. I stand by it, and I have fights about this constantly. It is my favorite Star Wars film. And I love it. I love the fact that nobody survives. And that was one of the reasons I was so excited about Andor, is because the director had the most grim interview about it before it came out. They asked him, like, how does it feel directing a show about a character who dies? And he just goes, we all die. And I was like, you know what? I'm in. Let's watch this. And it grew on me.
I mean, that's like the adage. The difference between a happy story and a sad story is when you stop the story.
Yeah.
And at first that was a bit of concern for me, but then I realized, you know what? At the end of Titanic, I know that the Titanic is going to sink. It's not the destination, it's the journey. And maybe this gives us a great insight into a character that I found kind of slightly annoying in the original movie. I don't like any of those. I tell you one character. Two characters I like. I like K2SO. I liked Chirrut Imwe, to the point where I actually thought that Chirrut Imwe should have his own movie and just should not have been in Rogue One from the beginning. He felt like a distraction more than an addition. In fact, he's too good an addition, but that's a whole other thing. So, and then this show comes around and it has its weak points, but it also has its strong points, and I am glad I saw it, and we will get into all of that. But before we do any of that, we've got to talk about the news! First news up on the slate is Ding Dong, the Bob is dead. Which your Bob? Bob Chapek. We ding dong, Bob Chapek is dead. Well, he's not dead, he's fired. He's fired from Disney. Came as a surprise to a few of us, I should imagine. Certainly came as a surprise for me. I don't pay attention to the corporate aspect of Disney because, frankly, that makes me want to burn things. But I say that. Disney itself makes me want to burn things. But apparently, despite having signed a 3-year contract extension earlier this year, he was ousted. Like, this was not a voluntary, like, I've decided I want to go. He was stabbed in the back by the board of Disney, who got Bob Iger back first, and then told him, oh, by the way, other Bob, you're fired. Apparently, this comes due to the fact that there has been a negative earnings report was the exact words they used. Negative earnings report released at the beginning of the month believed that Iger was uniquely situated to lead Disney. Basically, they're not been making as much money as expected, and apparently it's actually quite bad, which makes me slightly happy, but slightly concerned. And Bob got thrown out. He basically said, "Oh yeah, but like the Mickey's Halloween thing in Disneyland was really good." Bob, no one cares about that. That's not the highlight you think it is. Like, no one expected to make a bunch of money off of that, and other stuff is going quite poorly. So we're getting Bob Iger back. Now, so what you like about Bob Iger, he made a lot of decisions I don't like, but he also presided over lots of good stuff, like the Disney Marvel acquisition, which actually I do think ended up going pretty well. Was he around for the Disney Lucasfilm acquisition?
I think so. Either that or it was Eisner, Michael Eisner.
No, this is way before Eisner. Way after Eisner. Eisner was out like 90s, early 2000s. Then it was Iger.
Okay. I'm like, wow, the Star Wars thing seems like forever ago.
Well, I remember the day that happened. That was 2012. I was in university, and I was still away on my computer in my room, and then my flatmate knocked on my door and walked in and said, "Hey, Scott, just to let you know, Disney have bought Star Wars." And I said, "What do you know? You're just trying to wind me up because you know I hate Disney." Even back then, like, hated Disney. Like a 20-year-old, I hated Disney.
Can't blame him.
And then I was like, I'm going to go online and I'm going to look up the news just to prove how wrong you actually are. Oh, no. Oh, no! And then what proceeded was about an hour and a half of me in the fetal position in my other flatmate's room, screaming, crying, and banging my head against the floor.
Oh, man.
I'm not joking. I am not exaggerating. Look these guys up. If you can find them, they'll tell you that's what happened. And yeah, and honestly, my opinions of that have not changed that much. I think the only reason why Star Wars is at all decent right now is due to many people. I don't want to lay it out just at two people's door, but arguably the chief people who are the architects of this bold new direction Star Wars is going in is Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. Mm-hmm. Obviously, again, other people deserve plenty of credit. They absolutely do. But they're the two main ones. It's certainly not fucking Kathleen Kennedy. And I like it to be George Lucas, but he basically got cut out of the program. So yeah, and a lot of this has been going on under Chapek's supervision. A lot of it has not been great. A lot of it has been pretty good. Obviously, Disney don't have the same sort of hand in it as Kathleen Kennedy would do, being in charge of Lucasfilm and things like that. But let's be honest, it's not been fucking great. And he has been out. Apparently, Disney have claimed that they had the balance sheet from hell. So, here's the thing. Balance sheet from hell for most companies and balance sheet from hell for Disney are two very different things. So we don't know the full extent of that, but I will say this. I'm not sorry to see him go. I'm sorry to see Iger back, but we'll see how that all ends up. And all I can say is I just like it when anyone from Disney gets even a little bit of comeuppance. I really do. But we're going to move on for that. And something that video game fans will be very excited about. The Witcher 3 is getting a next-gen update. More than that, a free next-gen update. If you already have The Witcher 3, then you will get an update for free. This is part of CD Projekt Red's apology tour after Cyberpunk 2077. You know, all the free updates they do for that and the DLC that's coming for that. This is part of that. It looks pretty good. It's going to come out roughly early December 14th. It's going to come out just in time for the Christmas season. But again, it is free, so it's not exactly going to cost you anything. Are you a big Witcher fan?
I am a big Witcher fan. I just wonder if Henry Cavill is going to be playing this one or he's going to have Liam Hemsworth do it.
Well, that's the thing. Apparently, there's going to be a bunch of inspired by the TV show content in the new update. So, like, you can get like Henry Cavill's armor and stuff like that. There's not a lot of details on that, but it is in there. That's so cool. Who knows? Can I just say, side topic, I mean, I love the fallout that comes out of Henry Cavill leaving The Witcher 3 The Witcher series, because I dropped out of Witcher season 2 like 3 episodes in. I just didn't care that much. But I love the fact that he said, look, I went into this project because I wanted to be faithful to a book series that I love. You promised me that. You failed to deliver. So now I'm out. Good luck. And the whole of the internet agreed with him.
Yeah. He he tried his best, and I just loved hearing like every single person in that series was just like, yeah, the director is kind of okay, but Henry's like reading the books every time, and I was like, wow, this guy is serious about this.
Which showed in the show, because honestly, I stayed in as long as I did for Henry Cavill. I thought, despite the fact that he's sort of like a monotone sort of character, you could see the passion that Henry put into it. And considering that there's a petition out now with like thousands, hundreds, tens of thousands of signatures saying that the writer should be fired and he should come back. I mean, it goes to show when they wanted to do their own thing. And you can't, if you want to do your own thing, but you've got to respect the source material. And consider the fact that they sort of very rushed out a prequel series like Witcher Blood Origin, I think it's called. I don't know what that's going to be like. Maybe it'd be good. I mean, what are your expectations of it?
It depends how they do it. I enjoyed the animated film that they had.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought that was great, but I thought that was better than the Witcher series by far. It wasn't even close. And you were saying it was like the series feels like rushed, and I was only watching for Henry Cavill. Really, I think Jaskier also pulled me in. He was a very interesting character. He made me
just
laugh.
love the bromance. Toss the bromance for your Witcher.
That song was the best. but it was like, I remember I watched it, and I was kind of like trudging on, and I watched it with a few friends who have never played the games, and they mentioned the Wild Hunt at least 30 times in the show, but none of the times they said what the Wild Hunt is.
Yeah.
and they just kept bringing it up, and finally my friends were like, what is the Wild Hunt? Because they showed it, they talked about it, and we still don't know what it is. And I was just like, see, this is why this show doesn't get taken seriously, because nobody knows what's happening.
It's what I call Harry Potter syndrome. The makers of the Harry Potter movies relied so heavily on people having read the books that they just didn't bother to fill in so many gaps, and we unconsciously filled in the gaps in our own brain. But if you didn't read the books, you were completely lost and you had no clue what the fuck was going on. It's the same thing. But at the very least, fans of the game, and I am very much a fan of the Witcher 3 game, gets an update. But here's the question. When are we going to get a fucking remake or remaster or something of the first two Witcher games? Because I'm mildly interested in playing them, but I've seen like footage of like the first two games and just like, oh, I'm not touching that. Oh, no, God, no. But it'll be interesting to see that. Maybe because even though Witcher 3 is a great intro to the series, there are some characters and returning things. It's just like, I kind of want to know what happened beforehand. But we have to move on to that, to some sad news. Not only have we lost Kevin Conroy, arguably the definitive voice of Batman, we've also recently lost David Jason Frank, Tommy Oliver from Power Rangers, the Green Ranger, the White Ranger, and so many other characters. Dead at 49, and Conroy dead from cancer. It's utterly heartbreaking. Both of these are great people who love their fans so much and love the project they were in, suddenly gone way too soon for different reasons. There are speculation, there's rumors, reports that David Jason Frank died by suicide, but the main person who's reporting that is TMZ, so I pretty much think that that's fake.
Yeah.
Who knows? No matter how he died, it's none of our business. His family have asked for privacy, and frankly, any probing into that is disrespecting those wishes. So we'll leave it at that and just know that great person is gone and Conroy is gone. I mean, here's the thing. I've made it multiple times clear that I am not a Batman fan, but I've always also said that Batman Mask the Phantasm is one of my favorite superhero films of all time. That's for many reasons, but one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, is down to Kevin Conroy's performance. Yeah. I always go back to the scene in the graveyard where he's begging his parents' graves, not really expecting an answer, but just saying that he wants a chance at a normal life. He didn't ever think he was going to be happy. And as an out gay man, I can't help but wonder if Kevin Conroy sort of channeled sort of that, maybe that aspect of her life into that performance. And the good news is that maybe unlike the Batman, Conroy got a chance to be happy. And I think that showed not only in his performances, yes, but also in his interaction with fans. He said many, many times how much he loved being part of the Batman.
Yeah.
And the same with Jason Frank. That's why he kept on coming back to Power Rangers. It's because he loved the show and he loved the fans, and he became sort of this icon, this sort of legend. And now both of these legends have sadly passed. But the good news is we can always go back to them in the things they did, the TV shows, the movies, the video games, whatever it was. and remember why we love them so much in the first place. Not just for the character they played, for the people they were.
Yeah.
And so that's all we're really going to say about that. Having said all that, it is now time for a horrible tonal change with some ads. Check them out.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
Andor, the TV series. Like I said, I didn't have high hopes going into this. I didn't have a lot of expectations, but it suckers you in. But we were discussing this beforehand. You've got to bear with it. I actually stopped watching this show for a little while after like episode 4 or 5. I can't exactly remember. And then it came close to like it finishing run. So I thought like, oh, I might as well just binge the rest of it and just dive right into it. And then it starts to get really good. I'm not saying it's bad, episodes 1 to 5. But you do have to sort of power your way through. I mean, did you have a better time with that than I did? As you actually really liked Rogue One, the character?
It's funny because I did love Rogue One, but my thing is like Cassian was probably Andor was probably like my least memorable character of that movie, yeah. And I think that not because he was necessarily bad, but I think like you mentioned, there were so many characters just kind of stole the show, like. Donnie Yen was in the movie. How are you going to pay attention to anybody else? Alan Tudyk voiced a snarky robot. Like, there's just so many characters in that movie that like kind of like took you away. And Cassian was definitely like, I remember a Hispanic man. I felt great because I was like, oh my god, we have like a Mexican character with a Mexican accent. And I felt like super happy about that. But other than that, I didn't remember much. And then this show, you were saying it's slow burn. It built up like. It felt like a Star Wars drama, and I know that sounds like terrible, but it really was. It was a very slow, like you kind of have to grit along. He mentions a lot of names early on, and in the first 3 episodes, you're just like, oh my god, he's still talking about people we haven't seen. What's happening here? There's still so many things we don't know. And then after that, you kind of like start getting like little and little and little, and then all of a sudden you just ramp up the mountain in the like episode 7 or 8. It's just like a huge tonal shift.
What you did was sneaky, underhanded, and downright distasteful. I loved it.
Yeah, it's annoying because it makes some weird mistakes in the first episode. Let's go brief rundown of the first episode. This takes place 5 years before the Battle of Yavin, before Andor gets blown up by the fucking Death Star. The last sideway here, last shot of Rogue One with him is him like getting blown up and he's hugging fucking Felicity Jones and it focuses on his face. She was the main character and yeah, they focus on his face. I always thought that was weird. Anyway, but they before that, Cassian Andor is just like not a space bum, but he's like a scoundrel, a rogue wheeler dealer. But he goes to this planet, a sort of industrial planet called Morlana 1, and he goes to a bar because he's looking for his sister. You might think, oh, he has a sister. Interesting. Is this going to be like his primary motivation? Is this going to be the quest he goes on? Will he find her? Will he not find her? Will it be too late? Will it end in heartbreak or tragedy? Or will he commit himself to the rebellion in order to save her? Yeah, she's not important. No. At all. Like, fucking at all. She's mentioned exactly twice in the entire series. She does pop up in flashbacks a couple of episodes from now, but you might think, oh, this is his quest to save her and quest to find her. No, she's not in the show at all. She's not important whatsoever. Yeah. Why the fuck did they even bring her up then?
I thought the same thing. I was like, she's going to come out. She's going to be here. Every twist, I was expecting her to just appear. Just Deus Ex Machina, the sister, somehow in there. But no, you're right. She just didn't appear.
My only assumption is that they plan to do something with her in season 2, which has been given the go-ahead. And they, rather than just have her pop up in season 2 with no explanation, they wanted to lay the groundwork now. But there's a better way to do that. And as soon as he goes to Milano 1, a bunch of like corporate security people try and harass them, and he beats one, accidentally kills him, and the other was like, oh crap, it is Kay, I never saw you, and he shoots him in the face because like no witnesses. And It very much reminded me of one bit I did like in Rogue One, where right away he kills like an informant for the rebellion simply because they were in danger of being captured and he couldn't risk information getting out. And you could tell that tore him up inside. This sort of mirrors that in a very interesting way, because in Rogue One, he did that to protect the rebellion. In this show, he does it to protect himself.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting sort of mirroring of that right away. It sort of establishes what this character is and how he doesn't actually change that much, but his motivations is going to change, which I think will be interesting. Let's see how he gets on board with the whole rebellion thing. But he goes back to his home planet, well, not home planet, but his planet where he lives, Ferrix, where he lives with his mother, fucking Harry Potter's aunt from Harry Potter. No, okay. This is actually Marva, played by Fiona Shaw. I always know her name, but I can remember Fiona Shaw. Fantastically brilliant actor, great in the show, slightly underused.
I would say so. I would say slightly underused. I think they were trying to hype up the characters that were going to do a lot of action things towards the end. And so she kind of got left in the wayside because she's not going to be shooting anybody. But I agree.
I mean, she could have popped up a few more times, but I'm fine with what we got for the most part. And he gets his friend Brasso to cover for him. Oh, side note, in this town of Ferrix, there's a lot of people who look annoyingly similar to each other. Like, this Brasso guy looks very similar to this other guy, Tim. And in fairness, Tim dies pretty soon after this. But it got me a little bit confused a second. And there's other characters that look very similar to each other. And it's just a little bit annoying. They've all got like similar facial hair and similar skin tones and stuff like that. And it got me a wee bit confused, at least a little bit. It doesn't help the fact that they're all wearing the same clothes, which also doesn't help. But he also goes to his friend Bix, who they used to go out apparently, but they don't anymore. And she has got what I like to call frowny face syndrome, whereas that's a character who's got the same facial expression the whole way through. And I got kind of annoyed by that, but she gets better later on. It's a little while. At first, she's kind of frowny face, but she's actually not in it for much longer. Honestly, you could really split this show into 3 segments. Ferrix Part 1, Heist Interlude, Ferrix Part 2.
Yeah.
That's basically the show. And that's not a terrible structure, but
it's not. I'm excited. First of all, I'm excited to get out of sand dunes for one Star Wars show. It's too much sand.
I hate sand. It's rough, it's coarse, it's irritable, and it gets everywhere.
And like oh my god, an entire galaxy to explore, and somehow we always end up on Tatooine. And
a planet that looks just like Tatooine, Jakku. I mean, they marketed that as a junkyard planet, which would be really cool. But I've seen other junkyard planets in Star Wars that don't look like it.
Yeah. I remember in the Star Wars animated series, you'd get a different planet every episode, and you'd have this wide array. And in the movies, it's like, we got a desert. We'll give you a desert. You want a desert? Desert it is.
You get a special discount for filming in Sudan. Like, we're just going to go there. Oh, God.
But the Ferrix was great. I really enjoyed. And you're right. People do look a lot alike. I thought the same thing. I was like, is that the villain talking? No, that's someone else. Okay, got it. But I do think that they gave a lot of life to what it was. And plus, we forgot to mention the best droid. B2 is amazing. B2 is great. He's great.
No, he's annoying, okay? He's sweet. I get the appeal, but they give him the stuttering sort of thing, which is like, A, why don't you fix that? And B, that's kind of annoying. If it was a person with a speech impediment, that would be one thing, but as a droid, I don't know, it kind of rubbed it the wrong way. He's fine. I've seen worse droids, but... No, sorry.
Name a worse droid. C-3PO.
Hey. As someone who sounds a little bit like Anthony Daniels, I take exception to that, and he was useful. Okay, he did shit. But mainly etiquette stuff and complaining. But still, okay, what is the worst droid? What is the worst droid in fucking Star Wars? Not maybe Clapper from fucking Rebels, maybe?
I would
Maybe-
argue that any of the droids, I forgot their classification, but the ones that just go Roger Roger in the prequels.
In the prequel movies, yes, they're annoying, but in the Clone Wars TV series, they're like sweet little confused spawn porn darlings. I love them.
Oh my god, we're gonna get killed by a Jedi! And I only had 2 days until retirement.
It's great.
But anyway, he goes to Bix because he's got this thing called a Star Path unit. If you think the Star Path unit is important, it's not. There's a lot of things that are kind of not important here. This is basically, I say important, what sort of set the story in motion. And it comes back to play in interesting ways. We'll talk about that in a second. But you might think, oh, he's got the Star Path, he's going to try and sell it. And that's going to be his whole thing. But it's also going to be like getting him a black mark from the Empire. Kind of yes, but also no. And he basically says, hey, can I sell this to someone? And she's like, yeah, I've got this guy on the black market. Name of Luthen, played by Stellan Skarsgård.
Incredible.
Yes. Stellan Skarsgård, I have mixed feelings about as an actor. For me, he is like flipping a coin. Heads, great performance. He could be funny, he could be sweet, he could be sinister, he could be charming. Tails, nothing. It's not even bad, just does nothing. He gives me nothing, so I know nothing and I feel nothing. Not the case here. I thought it was going to be Tails. Turns out it was Heads.
He was so good in this, and I'm going to go ahead and say I've made a lot of assumptions about this show. I'm going to make up a lot of bold statements throughout this podcast, but arguably one of the best monologues in Star Wars. His final monologue is, well, not the final monologue, but towards the end of the series, he has this incredible soliloquy that he does, and it's just outstanding. Darth Vader couldn't have done it better.
Well, yeah, because he'd have to pause for breath every couple of seconds. But here's the thing with that speech. Half of it I found kind of cliched, and the other half I found really cool. But here's the thing. I didn't mind the cliche parts because he gave such a good performance. Because a good actor can take something that is just kind of mediocre and forge it into something great, and that's exactly what he did. I completely agree with you. One of the best. There aren't that many monologues in Star Wars, I will say this, but if there were a ton, that would be top 5 easily.
Yeah. I also really enjoyed it because it really put him against Cassian as like a character that we know is eventually going to die for his cause, because he said things like, I am willing to die for someone else's future, and I'm burning for a sunrise I'll never see, and something I'm condemned to use my enemy's traits against them, like tools, like and things like that. And these are all things that Cassian's going to end up doing throughout the course of this series and the movie. He's going to die before he's going to die so he can complete his mission for his side. He's going to use his enemy's tools. Like, it's such an incredible juxtaposition of like light and dark there.
It's a good show when you know exactly what the foreshadowing means and you don't care anyway because it's still just that good.
Yeah.
Obviously, that is way further on in the series. Meanwhile, while all this is going on, Bix's boyfriend, Tim, with 2 M's, is jealous of Andor, and he sort of ends up snitching him to the Imperials. But while this is going on, Morlana 1 has got this security guy called Cyril Khan, played by Kyle Soller. I thought this guy was going to be the Javert to Diego Luna, Cassian Andor's Jean Valjean. Not the case. It's one of the sort of subversion of expectations that actually I thought I wasn't going to like, but it ended up working so well I didn't care that much. He's less Javert and more. How would you describe him?
You got me thinking about Les Miserables.
Sorry. And then head is just like, do you hear the people sing? Sorry.
He could probably sing better. I will give you that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but so here's my thing. He wants to be Javert. He takes his job uber seriously to the point of being kind of obnoxious. But you kind of agree with him. Just like, you're so irritating, but you're also right. I hate that.
He is right to a point, but he's like also solely driven by this, and he's not his back and forth with his superiors, where he doesn't see the bigger picture, but he's not willing to accept that people he knew died. It's an interesting motivation, because you're not completely like, oh, this guy's an idiot. Like, you're just like, okay, I see where he's coming from, but he's probably not going to succeed.
No, but I think the reason why he's not going to succeed, and you do know from the outset he's not going to succeed, not because of like we've seen this narrative before, but just you can tell by his character, and that's because he is so single-minded, and Kyle Soller gives such a great performance because he comes across like a guy who is one really bad day away from snapping.
Mm-hmm.
Like shooting up your workspace type snapping. That it's got that sort of ironclad Stefan sort of principle sort of things in a world, the Empire, that was supposedly based on principles, but is actually based on corruption and not rocking the boat and things like that. And he can't settle that in his mind. You feel kind of bad for him, but at the same time, he is very much an antagonistic figure that works well as an antagonistic figure.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's very, I don't know, he like wants to like argue against the fact, oh, my colleagues were murdered, I have to go after this guy. This guy is clearly the villain. I have to do this. But then at the same time, when I watched it, I kind of agreed with his boss. Like, your colleagues were breaking the rules. They were where they were not supposed to be. They pushed someone they shouldn't have pushed. They kind of did this to themselves in such a way, like. And so, like, his boss just kind of goes hands off, and he's like, "No, we got to go after him." So at that moment, I was like, "Well, he's like, this is nice enough, but he's way outplayed. He's like the first day on the job, and he's trying to tell the boss what to do. It's just not gonna happen."
Classic overachiever sort of thing. He ends up tracing Andor back to Ferrix, along with like his deputy. They say, we got to go with this guy. Side note, it couldn't matter less, but I noticed quite a lot of Scottish actors / accents in this show. I am not complaining, as someone who's part Scottish and lives in Scotland. I fucking love that. In fact, I think some of it was filmed in Scotland, as well as down in Pinewood Studios down in London. But I just noticed that, and I thought, I like that. This is a nice little bit of representation for me. But here's the thing, though. Throughout these first couple of episodes, they drop it pretty quickly, which I'm glad for. They show that Andor grew up on like a sort of primitive planet back when he was known as Casa, on a planet called, I think it was Canary, and they decided to investigate a crashed ship along with his sister, and it's all like subtitled at this point. They speak like a different language, not like Galactic Basic or English, or whatever it is. And that shows how he ended up getting sort of poisoned, found by Marva, and also his adoptive father, Clem, and taken away from there. And his sister got split up from his sister and all that kind of stuff.
It's what was the time period? I think it was between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, for those keeping super big track of it.
Sure, and I wasn't keeping track of the timeline too much because I found myself realizing that I just don't care.
That's fair. It was interesting. His childhood was, I don't know, you were talking about like his time in Canary, and then they mentioned that it was his place wasn't ran by the Empire. It was prior Empire. It was the Galactic Republic, right?
Yeah.
I like that they're still like putting that mistrust that he has against. He's just, honestly, Cassian is just basically a conspiracy theorist at this point.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I just didn't like the flashback a bit so much. It's just they went on for just a bit too long. You didn't get any great insight into these people, how they live and why they live the way they do and things like that. And you're just waiting for like, okay, what's the point of this? Oh, I see. That's how he met Marva. Boom. You could have done that in one episode, or a flashback in just one episode. They kept on going for several episodes, and I just did not care.
I feel the sickening threat of brutal honesty, and I'm wildly uncomfortable.
And there was no subtitles, like you said, and so you're just kind of like staring, like trying to decipher body language.
Trying to figure out who's who. Wait, that's Andor, right? Keep track of him. I don't know. Honestly, I just want to mention that because we're not going to talk about it again, because there's no reason for us to talk about it again. But that leads us into the second episode, and it's basically just like a bunch of people converging to one area. It's Cyril Khan going to Ferrix, Tim reporting him to security people, and there's Cyril going along with like this guy called Mosk, his deputy, to going to get him, and Cassian preparing to leave the planet. Luthen going to Ferrix to get it. He also gets a nice... Was it him that had a nice conversation with that guy who sold stuff? Like the guy with the mustache?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that. That was a kind of a nice little scene. Not really worth talking about, but it sort of, again, expanded on the world and things like that. That was really cool. And again, another flashback. It's really not... So episode 2 is just a setup for episode 3 where shit gets real.
Yeah.
Because Luthen arrives in Ferrix, he goes to meet Cassian, and it turns out this whole thing is just like, oh, I don't care about the Star Path, I actually want you for the rebellion. Okay, why? Oh, he sold it from something, he's got skills, things like that. Okay, you're fine by the seat of the pants there, aren't you? You just randomly decide this guy, yeah, need him for the rebellion. Fair enough. But it makes you wonder what his ultimate goal is, and it turns out, no, it's just to recruit Cassian. And that leads to a big shootout with all the corporate people. And it's actually pretty cool. And this sort of cut me. I was still starting to lose me for a little bit, but then we got the action scenes. One of the things I loved about Rogue One was the action scenes. I thought those were great. These feel like great action scenes.
It was, oh my god, that scene where they're escaping is at the very end. Like the action scenes were great, but the scene where they're escaping, I think, is like burned into my mind. Where he's fleeing like Ferrix with Luthen, and Ciro just looks like destroyed. That his career is over, and Bix is mourning. Spoiler alert: Bix is mourning Tim's death, and I was just like, everything just kind of collapses all at once. And I remember like seeing that third episode, just like, is this still the same show?
It suddenly gets like a shot of adrenaline right to the heart.
Yeah.
And the good thing is it knows what to do with that adrenaline. It doesn't overstay its welcome, nor does it suddenly go forever and that's your action scene for the whole show. And it takes the same sort of energy in that sort of thing and puts it in different ways into other action scenes later on in the show. And it really works. It also serves as a great tonal change, because in the aftermath of that episode, you suddenly realize, the people of Ferrix realize at least, oh crap, things are never going to be the same again. Corporate's on its way out. The Empire is going to be on their way in. And that's what I love about this, because even though they've got this story with Andor and Luthen and all these characters going on here, there's a greater, wider story about the Empire, its nature, and how it has effectively become a totalitarian regime, completely gone away from the Republic, but you're starting to phase out the last vestiges of that. The very beginning of A New Hope, it's, Peter Cushing announces, don't worry, the Imperial Senate has been wiped away, that's gone, and now the individual like Moss and, warlords and people like that are now in charge under the direct supervision of the Emperor. And this is not treated like a big thing, but having seen the prequels, you suddenly realize, oh, that's a Senate completely gone then. And in this show, we see that Imperial Senate just like 5 years before it's completely gone. And you can see, oh shit, this is completely on its way out. This is becoming ineffective, and it's been slowly shuttered, with people not even realizing it or even caring. And it was done so well into the greater world building, and it made me realize this isn't a show about Cassian Andor.
It really isn't.
He's in it. He's an important character in it. He's arguably even the main character, but it's not about him. And that's okay. But they really shouldn't have called it Andor then.
I think it's super interesting, because it kind of does feel like Rogue One in that sense. It's the same showrunner, so it makes sense. But like, it's a cast. It's the 100% a cast. And Endor is just one of the pieces. They really should have named it Ferrix, because half the show takes place in there anyway.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I was so far as to say 2/3, no matter what we were saying earlier. And it was just kind of annoying, because there's all these scenes with Mon Mothma, played once again, returning to the role, as she's actually played a bunch of different times, by Genevieve O'Reilly. And I liked her scenes. I thought they were interesting, for this world building, but I kept thinking, like, shouldn't we be focusing on Cassian Andor right now? And then I realized, wait, why? Why should we focus on Cassian Andor? This clearly isn't his show. And I don't know, it feels like I appreciate sincerity of purpose. And when you've got a show called Andor, I expect it to be about this guy named Andor. Have other stuff going on in the background, but be it very much in the background. No, his story is just one of many. This is almost like the closest Star Wars has ever got is like a Game of Thrones type story. And I'm fine with that. It's really annoying in terms of like how the show is marketed. Although in fairness, this show has real problems with its marketing because I think this might be one of the reasons why Bob Chapek was fired, was because Andor is not on the main banner of Disney Plus. You're going to check that right now, aren't you?
I am. I am going to check that.
Check
I didn't
it.
notice that.
Go ahead and check it. You didn't notice that because you search for it, don't you? But here's the thing. Other people have noticed, at least in their territories or something like that. I don't know if it's different from wherever you are. But Andor, despite being a weekly show that up until recently was out on air, like right now, it didn't show up in the main banner at all. And it's like they did that for Mandalorian. They did that for the Book of Boba Fett. Why aren't they doing that for this show? Did it mean they don't have any faith in it? Does it mean they didn't know how to market it? Or was it just complete and utter oversight? And one of the reasons why Chapek was fired, because he just let so many things slip. Who knows? We can't speculate. All we know is it's not fucking there on the main front page of Disney Plus. Yeah. What was the point of acquiring Star Wars if you don't put Star Wars front and center when you got a brand new Star Wars show?
That's so weird. That's, it kind of reminds me of what happened not too long ago with Moon Knight. Moon Knight was the show that was the first pretty much standalone other than Miss Marvel that like kind of came up and out of nowhere. Nobody knew where it was going. Everyone was like really excited to see it. And then it subsequently hasn't been in any of the credits for Marvel. So when you see like the heroes, Moon Knight is in one show and then you can never see Moon Knight again in the opening credits. And people were just like, why would you do this? Like it was widely beloved. And just the direction that Disney Plus is going, like with some representation, they're just like kind of kicking some people out. And I'm just like, what's going on? Like Andor is a huge thing. And plus, arguably better than Book of Boba Fett.
Oh, not arguably. It is better than Book of Boba Fett. Because here's the thing. Boba Fett was very much about Boba Fett. It definitely was. But it was also a show that lacked an identity. It didn't know what it wanted to be. This show knows exactly what it is. It's a show about how an empire that is corrupt is starting to be splintered from within due to rebellion from individuals and how these individuals play a part in a much greater scheme. It has an identity. It knows what it wants to be. The problem is just that the title is a fucking lie.
Yeah, because halfway through it became Mandalorian Part 2.5.
yeah, exactly. That because again, very much about Boba Fett, but it had no identity. So why not make 2-3 fucking episodes about the Mandalorian? I like the Mandalorian. Don't get me wrong, the Mandalorian is fucking awesome. But I signed up to watch a fucking show about Boba Fett, and that's not what I got. In fact, quick side rant, and then we're going to an ad because we don't need to break this up too much. Here's how you fix Boba Fett. A lot of people said he needed to be more of a more outright aggressive crime lord sort of thing, sort of like a fucking Breaking Bad type scenario, except less of a build-up. And I completely agree with that, because Breaking Bad would not have worked if Walter White just walked up to Gus Fring in episode 1, shot him in the face in Hermanos Polo, or whatever it was called, and then says, I run all the meth in fucking wherever I live right now. And everyone's like, okay, with some mild resistance after that. That would never would have worked. Here's how you fix Boba Fett. Either make him way more aggressive and just like, no, I am going to be a crime lord. I'm going to rule with fear and things, but I'm just not interested in the trappings of power. Jabba the Hutt, he got fat and he got lazy. Same with Bib Fortuna. But I'm going to be ruling with an iron fist, and I'm going to be strong and dedicated because that's what the Tuscans and my father taught me. That could work. Because he's saying he's just like, I'm going to rule with respect, not fear. Bitch, you shot Bib Fortuna unarmed in his chair. Like, that doesn't seem very respectful. Alternatively, you go the complete opposite route. It says, you know what? When I was a bounty hunter, I sometimes skirted the bounds of law, but I worked within it as many times as I didn't. I was ruthless, but I was effective. This town needs the law. I lived with the Tusken Raiders. They had honor, they had civility, and they had rules that everyone was expected to follow, and it worked. The only reason why they got destroyed was because some people didn't follow the rules. Well, I'm going to bring the law to town. I'm going to be the marshal of the town. I'm going to fucking, get rid of crime. And yeah, you might say that doesn't seem very Boba Fettish, but he has been through. Fetish sounds very wrong. You can't really say Boba Fett-ish, sorry. But it would make sense considering all the trauma he's been through and the Tuskens and the Sarlacc and things like that. It could work, even though, much like Andor's sort of thing, it would be ultimately doomed to failure. That'd be a great fall of grace. A former criminal trying to be a good guy and failing. That would have been a great identity for the show, but that's not what they did. They went for this sort of middle road, and no one gave a crap.
Yeah, and some of the things that happened were just out of nowhere in that show. Oh my god, now we're talking about Boba Fett, which could be a whole episode on its own. But people just showed up out of nowhere. Mandalorian showed up, and then one of the greats from the Clone Wars series shows up, and I'm just like, he's been in one episode. He's already dead, and we're just not going to bring it up. So anybody who hasn't seen Clone Wars has no idea what's happening right now. Got it. Cad Bane
hasn't Clone Wars. Fucking Cad Bane. I fucking love Cad Bane.
Cad Bane is just dead now. Okay, sounds good. Well, I guess he was alive.
I favor the quality over quantity. I don't care that he was in it for a long time. I care for it that the time we spent with him was pretty cool.
He was amazing.
But that's just one problem to many. As you say, we can't really talk about that. What we can talk about is some ads. Check them out. And so now we come to the middle part of the show. This is sort of like its own self-contained series almost, where it's basically a heist. Luthen says, okay, here's the thing. Here's your secret identity. Call yourself Clem. Adopt his father's name. Here's like this crystal thing. I don't really know why he gave him the crystal, but he gave him it. And you're going to go with these bunch of people. They're a bunch of rebels. You're going to go and you're going to do a heist for like a big shipment of Imperial payroll from like this damn like fortress-like place while this big celestial event is going to go on as a distraction. And honestly, the time it took me to say that is a millionth of a fraction the amount of time it takes them to tell you. Like, they spent a lot of time talking about this sort of thing where it could have been way more simple and just effectively told you it. But in fairness, they've also got another sort of focus, which is making you think about these side characters that he's getting involved with, characters that he may actually come to care about. Except, no, he doesn't, because after this whole bit of the series, he moves on from all of them, essentially, with the exception of one person who's sort of got a bit of a thing for him. And, it's not bad. It's not bad. Particularly, what I loved about this bit was I like this one character. I forget his name, but he's basically like a full-on rebel philosopher. He's got like a manifesto about what he thinks the rebellion should be all be about and stuff. And he doesn't form a great attachment to Andor, but they kind of exchange ideas and you kind of listen to him. It's just like, I kind of see what you're getting at, but he's not a full-blown rebel yet. All this is about building up towards this heist. And in fairness, when it gets to the heist, that's when the show kicks into high gear. That's when things get really, really great. But we spend a bit of time getting to it, and it's a slog. This is the point which made me sort of give up on the show temporarily.
Yeah, it was definitely the slowest point. I would agree with that. We spent a lot of times talking about feelings, which is not a bad thing, but it kind of just drags to that point, and a lot of relationships. And I think it was the big turning point for Cassian too, for Andor. Just kind of go like, do I want to do this? I don't agree with the Empire. The Empire doesn't care about us. How do I put these into action? What do I wish for? And it's when he starts getting what's the name? Karras? When I'm talking to Karras and like how he's like, well, I don't really agree with your idealism, but we're cool. And so that's when the show starts to build, and then the heist happens. And oh my god.
The only two characters you really need to know from this group of people are Vel and Cinta, and they're actually they're in a relationship, and I think it's really cool that Star Wars finally showed like a full-on, like actively gay couple. Small problem though, they kind of feel like they hate each other. I mean, I know they don't. They make it very clear to show that they don't. But Cinta is very much full-blown in the rebellion, and Vel very much also is in the rebellion, but she's also like, hey, when we're going to get time for us? And it was kind of depressing. I would hope that, Star Wars arguably, at least as far as the screen goes, first gay couple could have showed a bit more love and affection towards each other, but I'll take what I can get. And no, those couple from fucking Rise of Skywalker does not count. Does not count. We knew nothing about them. Don't even know their names. They kissed once. That was cut out for foreign edits. They fucking do not count. I say this as a straight man, so take that with a grain of salt. Take whatever representation you can get. But you know what? No, fuck. You have to try harder. Okay?
I didn't even remember that was a couple.
Of course you didn't. Who would? They had no impact. They would just put that in there to get the whole LGBTQIA plus representation crowd off of Star Wars' back, while at the same time appealing to homophobic foreign markets. That's Disney's whole bread and butter. Fuck that. This is one of the reasons why I'm glad Bob Chapek does, because he oh god, because he's such a hypocrite, speaking out against the Don't Say Gay bill, and at the same time, people from Pixar saying like, Bob, remember when all those times we kept on trying to include representation in our films and you shot us down? Remember that? Yeah. Remember that character from Lightyear? Put her back in, you coward.
Yeah, they banned Lightyear, and now that it's over, Strange World is apparently having a gay couple in it, which is fantastic.
Well, that's one more reason for me to go see that. Admittedly, I
probably
have zero reasons to see that, but it's okay, I'll chunk it.
It's probably going to be in it for about 3 seconds in the back.
Wow.
If you have binoculars at the movie theater, you'll be able to catch it. Probably it's going to be one of those things.
5 years ago, I would have said, take what you can get. Now, as 30-year-old and as someone who feels like justifiably cynical, I'm just like, no, fucking try harder, you bitches. Anyway, I'm annoyed by it. But anyway, there's 2 episodes, episode 4 and 5, called Aldani and the Axe Forgets. These are the slowest of slowy birds. If you get through these 2 episodes, they're not terrible, but they are the slowest ones, and they are the ones that I found the most, not egregious, but certainly difficult to get through. When you get through these, there's light on the other side of the tunnel. If it's too much for you and it's like, it's not worth it, fair enough. But honestly, if this is one time I'm ever going to say this, this is the time. It gets better, and it is worth your time after these 2 episodes. And in fairness, it is only 2 episodes, and they don't feel particularly long. One thing I will say about this episode, the only thing I really liked about it, is that we get another sort of antagonist character. And when you realize Cyril Khan isn't the main antagonist, it's actually this person. This is Deirdre Miro, played by Denise Gough. I can never remember how to pronounce her name. She basically works for the ISB, the Imperial Security Bureau. She's basically like a spy master, like working for like their version of MI6, but evil. So MI6, Actually, you know what? I say that the better example would be the KGB. That's really the vibe they're going for, and they does work very well for that. And she's basically trying to prove herself, but unlike Cyril Khan, she's competent, she's focused, she's not overly idealistic, but she can also see patterns. That's why I mentioned the star path earlier, because even though it makes no real connection to Andor as a character and his motivation, his story, and his quest, it's very important for her because she traces that as part of a series of high-tech thefts, which she thinks, wait, this is leading out to a big rebellion front. She's putting the pieces together. She's the Javert. And she works really well at it. Actually, I say Javert. She's a fucking, I can never remember his name. That character from Inglourious Bastards. You know who I'm talking about. Not France. Hans Lander.
Yes.
She's basically that character, but slightly less smiley and less of a pipe carrier. And she's this detective, and she's putting things together, but she has to deal with incompetent / brown-nosing colleagues, as well as a supervisor who seems like he takes us seriously, but it's also like, you gotta learn to play the game a little bit better.
Yeah.
And this is what I love about this show, because it establishes so much about this world subtly. It shows how the rebellion is going to break out. It shows why the Empire is so strong and so brutal, but also why it is fundamentally flawed. Why every single fascist organization is fundamentally flawed and doomed to failure. Because, and people have pointed this out before me, so I'm not saying anything new, but in any fascist society, government, dictatorship, whatever, the appearance of strength is always more important than actual strength. Yeah. That will always be a priority, don't get me wrong, but they got to look strong, and so they celebrate even the tiniest little victory, not seeing the woods for the trees. She sees the woods for the trees. She so much sees the whole picture, and is just like, guys, we've got to focus on this thing because this is a big weakness. I guarantee you, if she was put in charge of overseeing the construction of the Death Star, she would say, patch up that hole, guys. That's going to lead to some problems.
It's funny you mention that, because when I watched it, I was thinking, wow, if she was, because we just, not too long ago, the Obi-Wan series wrapped up, and I was just saying, if she was in charge of catching Obi-Wan, he wouldn't make it past, it'd be a week. She'd have him in a week. Like, here you go, here's Obi-Wan. Have fun, do whatever you want with him.
Pretty much, yeah. She's that good, but the problem is she has to deal with, again, all this incompetence slash you got to jump through hoops from her. And what I like about it, the supervisor character, he's like, be careful, watch your back, but he's also just like, no, you're right. That's a good point. Let's do that. Before, he was just like, oh, you've really got to prove that thing. Oh, is that really what you think? And then he's just like, oh, wait, no. He was actually just like, that's a legitimate question. And then later on, he's just like, okay, you were absolutely right. I believe you. Let's get cracking with that. Guys, look at what she's doing. But at the same time, he does fall into like the pitfall of, we got to show strength. The Emperor wants this done, so we're getting this done. And what I love about this, I guess, a side of the show, the Emperor gets mentioned multiple times by different kinds of people. And here's the thing. We know a lot about Emperor Palpatine as a senator, a chancellor, someone who destroys the Jedi and takes over the Galactic Republic, and as the evil final boss in Return of the Jedi. But we don't know much about him as an imperial emporic statesman. What his perception is, what his relationship is with bureaucrats and admirals and, high-ranking officials or the aristocracy. And yet this gives us a bit of an insight. And it doesn't portray him as a particularly scary, intimidatory figure. But again, he does show how central, how important it is to some people's lives because he puts himself on that level of importance.
Yeah. It's a really interesting, concept, because the Empire isn't scary because there's two guys with shiny swords heading it. The Empire is scary because they have this power, they have the connections, they have people everywhere, they have guns and guns and guns and guns, and it really sells that. Whenever they talk about the Emperor, they talk about him like he's like a shogun or like this big. You're never gonna see him. Like the layman is never gonna know what this guy looks like.
You don't have to see him because. Again, just the idea that so many people are desperate to please him, either consciously or unconsciously, it shows the influence that he has. But this is the thing, again, going back to dictatorships, whenever you develop a cult of personality, you establish yourself as a centralized figure of power, not only do you have a lot of people gunning for you, but also it just means that the buck stops and ends with you, which is why when he died, and he did die, Rise of Skywalker, the Emperor somehow returned, fuck off. That's why the Empire crumbled and became the remnant in the original canon, because you might say how's the Emperor dying going to fix everything? Well, how did Hitler dying fix anything? Because here's the thing, after Hitler shot himself, someone did become the new Fuhrer. It was Admiral Dönitz, I believe his name was. And he inherited a crumbling, splintered, fractured junta, essentially, that wasn't going to survive 5 seconds after Hitler. And so it was just like, oh, shit. Could someone get me Churchill / Eisenhower / Stalin's phone number, please? Thank you. And if he had tried to go any further, it would never have worked because, again, cult of personality. And that's one of the few things I do like about the prequel trilogy, is that they show the advent of the Empire. in a way that you might not think is particularly realistic, but it has more parallels with real life than you might think.
Yeah.
But anyway, let's go to the things where things that really starts kicking off. The episode 6, known as The Eye, that might as well be called The Heist. This is when they have to go into the heist. And it's a heist episode. In fact, it's a better heist episode than Solo was a heist film.
Was Solo a heist film?
Barely. That's the problem. They thought it was a heist film, but it barely did any heisting. It was just like Han Solo gets his stuff. But it goes with all the layers of a good heist movie in basically an hour. The tension, the like, ooh, things going to get wrong. Things going smoothly at first, but then going wrong. And then suddenly big race to the finish where they finally win. Well, hey, but it comes at a price. In the Italian Job, they're hanging off the side of a cliff. Here, not only do multiple people die, including like young Manifesto kid, because he gets crushed by a big block of bullion. Jesus. Fuck. But also, like, one of the other guys is just like, hey, so Andor, we could, like, steal the money and head off and, like, split it 50-50. And Andor's like, phew! Fucking shoots him, like,
Choke on a slice of shut-up cake, you unfathomable swamp crab!
He's very much act first, ask questions later throughout the show.
That kind of works for him in a way, but also because he had to go through the bonding with all these other teammates, what little that there was, and him realize, like, you know what, stabbing these people in the back, while our friend is having surgery by a guy with, like, 4 arms, is kind of a dick move, and he shoots him because, like, no, you're too dangerous to be left alive, or something like that. But then he goes just says, like, hey, by the way, that guy tried to betray you. Sorry, he's dead. I'm taking my cut. No more, though less. See ya, bye. And it's like, okay, they're not flipping a switch. He's not going from I'm in it for myself to rebel commando. They show the progression, which is great. And honestly, the next few episodes are all about showing that progression in a way that I kind of wish the show was all about. Like, this last third really should have been stretched out a bit more. And I don't usually say that for the whole series, but maybe we need to go through other stuff to get to that point. I don't know. And in fairness, the episodes are a suitable length for us to go through that, because we get to episode 7. Let's go for some of the other characters first. ISB is figuring out some stuff. Luthen is hooking up with fucking Forrest Whitaker and people like that, and trying to manipulate parts. Mothma is trying to raise funds for the rebellion, but also like channel it through legitimate / secret means, which means she's got to eventually marry off her daughter in the quote Trangillan tradition, where they're like teenagers to this young boy.
Yeah, the guy who's getting surgery dies, right? Yeah, the guy who's
he does die. Yeah, and I thought like, oh, he's gonna make it, but he'll be like paralyzed or something like that. But it's okay, like I'll fight for the cause, or maybe he'll get disillusioned. No, he fucking dies.
Yeah, he just dies.
And it kind of sucks. It goes a bit of a blow, because he's the one like you cared about the most, because he was the youngest, cared the most, and wrote a fucking thesis about why the rebellion is necessary. And you hear him talking about that several times, and Andor actually keeps that. He keeps a copy of it, and it keeps on referencing it a few times. Meanwhile, Cyril Khan goes back home to his mum. Remember when I said Cyril Khan feels like he's one bad day where he's snapping? The snapping involves him killing his mum with a shovel.
Yeah.
I am convinced of that. He's going to put his mum in a freezer. Because they clearly got issues, and the actor playing her does such a great job, because you kind of hate her, but it's also just like, they just got dynamic issues. They're just two kind of broken people almost. I mean, what did you make of her?
I don't know. It was her character play, like when he talks to her. First of all, I thought the scene was just so strange when it first started, because
He's
it was
got
just like
figures in his room.
Yeah, I was like, what are we doing here? And then the conversation, it's like you can't get a read on her at first, and then you're like, I don't know if she's crazy or he's crazy or they're both crazy. The actor did a good job, because I remember just sitting there just thinking, what the hell is going on the entire time? And even if he had killed, like, if anything he would have done, I would have been like, I kind of see this happening. Like, killing with a shovel or anything like that, I would have been like, yep, yeah, this makes sense to this, because I'm so confused.
Fucking Norman Bates type situation. And he ends up getting a job through like family connections at the Imperial Bureau of like weights and measurements or some shit like that.
The Bureau of Standards, I think.
Oh,
it just reminds me of Futurama. It's just bureaucrats. He's like a grade 131.
See, it reminded me a little bit more of the film Brazil, where the characters are like editing history and stuff like that, and it's like part of this fascist organization, but it's also very much like number crunching and stuff, because, when you're changing records or re-editing history and something like that, that's a lot of admin. But I think the Futurama reference probably makes a bit more sense. And he's just like, and it turns out he's been like spending like the first week there sending out like fucking, how do they describe it? References to Cassian Andor saying this man is dangerous because he's wanted for fraud. This man is dangerous because he's wanted for jaywalking. This man is dangerous because he killed someone's dog or something like that. And he gets a little chat from, now I've forgotten her name. Deirdre Miro. This is the problem with fucking made-up names. It's very difficult to keep them sorted in your head. But they get this whole back and forth thing. Her being laser-focused, him being sort of like, not wild, but like barely restrained, wanting to go for Andor. They have this sort of like meet-up where she like questions him, but it's vaguely informal. Just like, hey, stop what you're doing, do what you're doing, but give us the info you have. And I could feel, coming from the internet, this terrible sense of,
oh, for heaven's sakes, just kiss, you moron!
people are gonna ship these two real hard.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was kind of shipping them, not gonna lie.
But here's the thing, later on, he ends up kind of stalking her, and she's like, this is not okay. But I don't know if this was intentional or not, or if this was directed to them or not. But there's a little bit of intrigue in her voice. And it's just like, you are just like not going to get anywhere near this. But there's this weird sort of animal magnetism between the two. And it's like, oh, this is so toxic and so wrong. I love it. I am here for it. I don't know if that was their intention or not, or if it's just like us putting our like shipping fandoms on them. But I think a lot of people feel the same way. Judging by what I've seen on the internet, a lot of people do feel the same way.
I think it would have been less of like, this is like the weirdest thing if the actor didn't do his best job of portraying the creepiest man who's been on this show. Everything he does, you compared him to Norman Bates, and you're right. It's like the guy's wearing a mask the whole show. Because anything he does, you can't help but just, like, the guy could open like a fridge and I'd be like, oh, he's got heads in there. Like, anything he does is just like filled with like, he's done something crazy.
You're absolutely right. Maybe it's just the actors have really good chemistry. They just play off each other really, really well. While this is going well, it turns out that character we mentioned earlier is the cousin of Mon Mothma. That doesn't matter at all, frankly. I'm sure it will matter in season 2, but it doesn't matter now. Luthen has got this whole sort of thing going on with his assistant. They're both in the rebellion, and he's just like, hey, we really need to, put all our trust in Andor. And she's just like, no, he knows about the heist in Aldani. We could link him back to you. He needs to fucking die and shit like that. Mon Mothma is also having a thing with her husband because it's so interesting. I didn't get this at first, but then I rewatched it and I realized she has to make it look like the money being transferred for the rebellion is legitimate. And she basically says, I am being watched all the time by people in parties, by my friends, possibly by my husband. My driver definitely reports to ISB, and that is later confirmed. And she uses that to her advantage. She accuses her husband of gambling again. Apparently he's a problem gambler. And saying like a person at my party said that you were gambling again, how much, say you lost so much money and that's why, our finances are all screwy. And he's like, what? No, I didn't do that. And at first you're like, wait, is he lying? Because he seemed like a bit of a sneaky bastard so far. But then you realized, oh shit, she's lying to her husband's face, accusing him of something she knows he did not do because she knows her driver is listening in.
Wow. I actually didn't even catch that.
Well, I didn't the first time around. I someone else mentioned it, and I was like, oh yeah. It was actually probably a bit too subtle, maybe. But I'm sure we'll get a great expansion on that later on in the show. But we keep on talking about all these side characters. What's happening to Andor? Well, he goes to like this resort planet. We're spending his money, and he's out for a walk one day. He's going to go to a shop, and then he gets accosted by a stormtrooper played by Sam Witwer of all people. That's a cool cameo. And he gets also confronted by a K2SO type security droid. And he basically just gets caught up in the middle. So he's like, hey, there's a bunch of people who are running for a crime. Are you running for a crime? No, I'm just walking to the shop. A likely story! And because of his heist, all of the Empire is on like massive high alert. A lot of freedoms, protections, and civil liberties are being rescinded even more than they already had been. And so just for walking down the street, he gets 6 years in prison. And he's like, I'm just a tourist. But nope, he gets sent off to jail. And it's such an irony that, because ISB, everyone's looking for him because he can be linked to so many different crimes and the Aldani heist. And they don't know that he's already in jail for a crime he didn't commit under a false name. It's so cool.
Yeah.
And then we get the prison scenes. The prison scenes are arguably some of the best in the entire show. And I thought it was going to drag again. I thought this is the point where, like, oh, he's going to spend a lot of time here, and it's going to be him getting to know all these other side characters that were only just now being introduced. Somehow, all of the slow pace from before does not matter, because whilst a ton of stuff doesn't happen necessarily, the show comes alive and it makes you feel like a lot of stuff is happening.
Yeah.
And it's annoyingly cool.
Yeah, I felt the same. We get yet a new name for Andor in this, because he's been switching names every 3 episodes.
Yeah.
This I think is the worst one. He's like Keef, but with 2 E's and an F. So and
Keef, yeah,
it's just the worst. From Clem to Keef, I didn't think we could get any worse. But you're right. He's like sitting there, like talking to like the other prisoners, and they're like in the prison transports, and they're going to, was it Narkina 5 or something like that?
Yeah, that was the episode title, Narkina 5. Basically, not a prison planet, but it's a big ocean with lots of different like prison islands on it. And they showed like this electrified floor or something like that. I don't think it's how it actually works, but it's just like, you're here to work. This is basically a labor camp, and you're going to do what we say. And it's really, really cool. We'll get into why it's cool in just a bit. One thing someone else has pointed out, and I 100% agree with, this prison looks astonishingly similar to the Star Wars Hotel.
Really?
It looks, if you look at pictures of the Star Wars Hotel and pictures of this place, it looks disturbingly similar. Like, that really, and frankly, if there's a choice between the Star Wars Hotel and the prison, I'd choose the prison, because at least they're not going to make you pay for it. And also, you look at all the activities that they have on the hotel, and it's like,
oh no, this is much worse.
Oh my God, you're absolutely right.
You're looking at it right now. Yeah, yes.
I think this is the most I've Googled in one of these episodes that I've done with you. But
well,
oh my gosh,
so many people have, unlike Book of Boba Fett, people actually have stuff to say about this show. There's interesting little bits that people can explore and analyze and debate about. Unlike Book of Boba Fett, which gave us nothing, so we talked about it for like 2 seconds afterwards, and then we stopped. But he goes along and he introduces all these characters. The side characters, for the most part, we won't talk about because we don't need to. There's one character called Mellish, apparently was in Rogue One. I don't fucking remember him, so.
I didn't even know that. So
because again, Rogue One left such a poor impact. But apparently, I haven't confirmed this. But anyway, the main character we need to know about is the guy he is a prisoner, but he sort of like runs their bit of the work camp. Basically, they're put into a room. There's all these different levels, and all these different rooms are different levels, all these different tables, different rooms, and they're all assembling components. What are components? We don't quite know. But they're all competing against each other. The table that does the best gets flavor in their food mush. The table that does the worst gets fucking electrified on the bad floor to incentivize sort of production and productivity, but also to pit them against each other rather than the people running the prison. They go into detail and explain this much more. It's less subtle, but it actually works really well because it's just like, oh shit, this is evil. This is really evil. Like, full-on immoral shit, like the Zimbardo prison experiment or something like that. But the person you need to know is this guy called Kino Loy, played by Andy Serkis.
Yes. One of my favorites.
Andy Serkis is probably my favorite actor of all time. That may change from time to time, but you know what? He is absolutely incredible. A lot of people wondered, is he Snoke? Is he gonna get cloned? Frankly, I don't care. He's a completely different character, and best of all, he's actually playing a character this time than just CGI a bunch of shit and then say, go hog wild and look like you're starring in a Playboy cover. I don't know. We all remember how that looked. And he plays a natural character, and he's like running the floor. He's like, I've got like a couple of days left on my sentence or whatever, and then I am out. I don't want anything screwing that up, so you're going to do what you say. But if you have a problem, come to me. I will help you. If you're going to be a problem, I will come down on you hard. Hmm. And it's interesting because you think, oh, he's going to be an antagonistic figure. He's really not. He is trying to do his best in a hard world to help people in the only way he can. And you can see as the episodes go on, he actually cares about a lot of people under his charge. And it's so interesting. You get a very short amount of time with this character. He's probably my favorite character in the whole show.
Yeah. He's so... I mean, first of all, it's Andy Serkis, and like, how can you, anything he does, you're gonna want to like you're gonna want to love him. But also, I agree. I think he was incredibly charismatic. Like, his motivation was clear in everything he did, and you're just like, awesome, I'm in. Let's do it.
And yeah, and it becomes revealed after a while. This is what I love about the show. It sort of shows how when you isolate different prisoners a different way, information has to go through in unique ways and unique channels. They realized that there was a guy who supposedly served a sentence but got transferred to another prison because they're never going to get out. They keep on getting put back into prison over and over again to manufacture these parts. And when that got out, the prison people had to kill all like 100 people just to keep it silent. And they realized, oh shit, we're never getting out. Yeah. One of the older people dies. The medic is just like, yeah, no, people are not getting out here. They're never going to leave. And just like, don't spread it around. And you can see this kills Kino Loy because it's just like, I had a goal, I had a dream, was going to get out, it was going to be fine, and I was going to come down hard on anyone who said otherwise. But now I've basically got irrefutable proof that's not going to happen. And he's instantly like, let's get the fuck out of here.
Yep.
No hesitation. And you could see them all building up. And they realize we like outnumber them. There's a weakness in their security system. We're going to exploit that. And they do. And that gets us the episode One Way Out. Full on prison break. Kino Loy gives an amazing inspirational speech over the tannoy. They basically take control of it, and they're all just like en masse, rushing out, going out into the water to swim to the shore. And Kino Loy says, I can't swim. What were your feelings when he said that?
Honestly, it was heartbreaking. I was like, he's done. And I don't know. I was holding on to like the hope because, you know, obviously I wasn't expecting anyone from Rogue One to survive, but because we hadn't seen this guy, I was like, oh, he's it. He's going to be back. He's going to be like leading and things like, and then when he said that, I was like, it's game over. And now I'm like fully emotionally invested in this show.
Because we only got like, was it 3-4 episodes with him max, and not even probably that long. And you care about him so much. And when he said that, Andy Serkis is such a great actor. There's so much conveyed in the way he said it. Bear in mind, it's in an action scene where there's lots of people jumping around him and lots of chaos going around him, and he says it. And I was just like,
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
Yeah.
It was heartbreaking. But Andor is like saying, oh, we're going to figure something out, but he gets knocked over the side and is forced to go on the run. This is episode 10. At this point, I thought, oh wow, that's how they're ending the series? My god, what a great cliffhanger. There's 2 episodes left. And in fairness, I didn't know that, because I thought it was 10 episodes. Turns out it's 12. And I was a bit disappointed. And then I saw the next 2 episodes and thought, okay, actually, this is pretty good. The Empire has pretty much invaded Ferrix. They're now running the show there. Bix has been captured and tortured and interrogated and broken. And everyone's getting really worried about that. Marva is buying full into the rebellion. Andor managed to escape, managed to go back to the beach planet, get his money back, and just goes back to Ferrix. It's like, hey, Marva, let's go. And she's like, no, I'm going to stay here. Then she dies. And that's when I thought, oh my god, they fucking star-pathed / sistered us again. She's not important. How wrong was I? Because then we get the funeral scene. And the Imperials all converge on the spot. Cyril Khan converges on the spot because everyone's just like, this is the perfect way to draw in Andor and capture him. This is a perfect trap. We're going to make it seem like we're giving them a little bit of leeway, but holding back for the funeral to make it seem like it's perfectly innocuous, and then we'll spring the trap. And I thought, okay, I see what they're doing here, but Andor's going to swiftly evade them or something like that. He's going to use it to his advantage. Again, how wrong was I? He does very little, in fact. It's the people of Ferrix. Mm-hmm. They break all the rules for the funeral. There's actually way more of them than there should be, coming in from different spots. And the people's just like, what? Oh, they weren't supposed to do that. Oh shit, this ain't good. But barricade that shit, quickly. Oh god, they're coming from another direction. What's going on? And then the droid, B2AEMO, whatever it's called, shows a projection of Marva giving a speech about the Empire. If Luthen's speech is number 1 in terms of monologue, she's definitely number 2. Yeah. Fiona Shaw hits it out of the fucking park.
It was incredible. It's such a great rallying speech. My God.
Full-on call to arms. And at that point, it reminded me very much of the V for Vendetta movie. There's, as much as I am not a huge fan of that movie, I much prefer the graphic novel. There's a scene in it where one of the characters just like, who works for like the fascist government that's running the UK, is just gonna like, the guy that we've been hunting has got a plan, and he's focusing on one element. Someone is going to do something stupid, and it's going to ignite a rebellion. Mm-hmm. And this stupid person is this person who, the Imperial officer who kicks over the droid. Carnage breaks loose. It's Imperials against all the people of Ferrix. People are getting blown up. They're getting shot. They're getting battered. And it's fucking awesome. Andor uses the distraction to try and rescue Bix. And it looks like fucking ISB agent. I have to look her name up again for the 3rd fucking time because I cannot remember her name. I
love Star Wars, but the space names are so hard to keep.
Dedra Meero. And it looks like she might get caught in the fray and is going to get killed. Cyril Khan shows up and he's like, you come with me, Imperial scum. And it takes her off to a side bit. It's just like, no, it's okay. It's me. She's like, you are not supposed to come here. They are like centimeters apart from each other at that point in a crowded storage space. And again, I was just like, now kiss. It's a whole thing, but he gets her to safety because again, he disrespects his like mother's wishes and his job and the wishes of the Imperial Security Bureau just to hunt down Andor. This guy's going to kill himself over Andor. I don't think Andor even knows he exists.
Yeah, Andor's fully not aware of this man's existence in the least, and he's been hunting him for like 11 episodes.
I still don't want to spoil it, but then it has been said, so it's not really a spoiler. I bet the way these two meet for the first time is he finally corners him. He's like, at last, I've got you, Andor, and Andor immediately shoots him.
That'd be fantastic. I fully expect the Thanos thing when he meets Scarlet Witch. You ruined my life. I don't even know who you are.
Yeah, that's basically it. And oh god, so much stuff is going on there. All the people are rising up. He gets all the people that we I care about, in big quotation marks, onto a ship and sends them off. And the droid's like, "Are you coming, Andor?" "No." "Why?" "Because you're very annoying." Oh, wait, that was me. But he sends them off, and that wraps up an awful lot of stuff. But what's this? Luthen is going to get Andor. He's also there because he has got to kill him. He's got to wipe him out. He's the last loose end. And Andor realizes this. He spotted him earlier, confronts him on his ship, which is called the Fondor, even though Fondor is the name of like a planet or a shipyard in Star Wars. That was kind of confusing for me.
Isn't Andor also the name of a planet?
Andor. Alderaan. No.
No. There's another one that's like close. I remember thinking
Endor.
Yeah, I was like, come on.
Oh, you're right. That is way too similar.
Yeah.
That is. Just call him Cassian or something. Just partition that in your mind. But he basically goes up to him and says, like, "Hey, there's a gun there. You could shoot me." "Why? What game was this?" "Oh, I'm all in. I've seen what the Empire's done. I've been subjected to them at the prison and seen the cruelty of them. If I'm going to fight for something, I might as well fight for you. Use me." And Luthen, who hasn't really wanted to kill him, is like, "Okay, then." And that's where we end the series. Except no, because there's a post-credit scene. We see all the big machine things that they were building in the prison being assembled by droids, and as we pan out, we see that they're being assembled in space as part of the machine work of the Death Star.
Dun, dun, dun.
I think most people saw that coming, but I didn't, in fairness. I was so focused on the prison scenes of the character stuff, I didn't focus on like the machine, like why are they building that? I did briefly, but then I was distracted by Andy Serkis's brilliant performance.
I also really love the continuation of coming back to the Death Star as like this terrifying weapon. Because it is, like, it's a planet destroyer. But I think, like, in rewatching, like, the trilogy or even thinking about Star Wars, you're just like, okay, yeah, it's the Death Star. But, like...
They overused it.
Yeah, they overused it. But, like, looking back, like, if you live in a galaxy and you discover that the government you're terrified of and you're trying to fight back against could just blow up your whole planet at the flick of a button, then you're not going to mess with them. You're just going to be like, okay, sorry, I'm good.
It makes you wonder how much the head of ISB knows, because does he know about the Death Star? He's just like, oh, we're going to celebrate this petty victory against this one side character, Anton, whatever his name is, because I secretly know there's a fucking Death Star approaching. And we also see a cameo from a character called Amel Yularen, who was featured on the Clone Wars multiple times, that is also in that scene that we mentioned earlier with Peter Cushing on the Death Star in Episode 4, The New Hope. Like, he's a side character with no lines, but he's very much there. I don't think he died on the Death Star. I don't know that for certain. But he would have definitely known about that, if not then pretty soon. So... And here's the thing, again, it's like that officer on the Death Star said, this station is the greatest power of the universe, I suggest we use it. Not seeing the full ramifications of that. And you're absolutely right, it does sort of bring this up looming sort of presence sort of thing. And it'd be very interesting to know, I'd like this series to continue actually, post Andor death, call it something different I guess, showing the reaction to the destruction of Alderaan and the great implications of that and how rebellion sort of foments and gets increased because of that. It'd be very interesting. And that's basically where the show ends. There's probably one or two minor plot points that we might have missed, but again, they're window dressing. Not bad, just window dressing. And I ended up seeing that. What were your thoughts as that show ended? Like, what was your overall, just like, oh, it's over, now what sort of feelings?
I liked the now what, because, like I said, I did enjoy Rogue One. And so, like, Rogue One, it led directly into the first Star Wars, and so it was very nice in that sense. But I definitely enjoy that this show kind of, like, has other places it could go, and I want it to go other places, but it could also just kind of leave it where it is, which I hope that it doesn't do that. But it's also, there's so many other people I'd love to see again. Like if Mad Milkson came back to play his role that he did in Rogue One, I would be 100% like
that would be really
in
interesting. There are rumors, and I think those rumors are not necessarily substantiated, but there are reasonable that Alan Tudyk will be returning as K2SO. We've got reports that there's going to be a big time jump in between this season and the next season, which itself will have a few time jumps, which I think is probably pushing it a bit much. But you know what? Don't rush to get to the events of Rogue One, but don't take your sweet time either. Other shows that we want to see, and they got a full slate of that. Well, mind you, they got plenty of time where they keep on pushing back the Rogue Squadron movie. You fucks. Kathleen, not Kathleen Kennedy. Fucking, what's her face? Why can I not remember her name? Directed Wonder Woman.
Oh my God! Now you got me.
I do know her name. I just it's late and I'm tired, and I've been talking about Boba Fett so much.
Patty Jenkins. That was what do you call her, Kathleen? Patty Jenkins. Fucking, I'm looking forward to that movie, and it keeps getting pushed back. We've got no notion of when it's going to be released, and I wonder again if this has led to Bob Chapek's firing because of the problems with that. But who knows? I can't attribute everything to Bob Chapek being fired. I just want to blame him for a lot of stuff. Chapek. Everything is Bob Chapek.
This is all your fault, Bob.
World problems, all Bob Chapek. I blame him all the way down the line.
All we know is that season 2 definitively will be coming out 2024. It has been confirmed. It's already started production. I am looking forward to that. Here's what my hopes are for season 2. Bit more focus on... well, I say focus. Don't include all these side characters. Give them the bare minimum of characterization and then fuck off or kill them sideways. Either make them red shirts or have them stick around for long enough that we actually care when they die. That's just more than 2 episodes, okay? Like Kino Loy, that's the exception, because that really fucking worked, because they gave him the time necessary within those episodes. But in the heist episodes, you got all these different characters competing for time, and I didn't really have a reason to care about them, except for that maybe that one. Less of that. And aside from that, though, it's a great show. It's a fucking political spy heist action thriller show with good character development, interesting world building, great direction, especially towards the end, great performances. Diego Luna, I did not like his performance in Rogue One. I thought it was great in this show. At first, I was like, I kind of have to get used to him. And then eventually, it was just like, I see what they're going for here. And he's pretty good. I guess Diego Luna is an actor that I think can exude a sort of like a charisma. I don't know if you ever watched this film called The Terminal.
Yeah.
He's in it. He's in that movie. And he actually falls in love with that movie with Zoe Saldana.
Yeah.
From Star Trek. That's weird to me. And she actually is a Star Trek fan in that movie. And he's like this cute little like chipmunk in that movie. He's like really excitable. He's just like, oh, this is really cool. I can't wait to do this stuff. I just want a bit of that enthusiasm in this show. It comes out in drips and drabs here and there. He's not a completely boring, dour character, although he will become that kind of character, which kind of sucks for me. But you know what? We're going to get K2SO pretty soon, so I'm okay with that.
I'm hoping that we can see K2SO actually get turned into like his reprogramming and everything. But I knew he was coming eventually because, Disney Plus basically has like, they have some dirt on Alan Tudyk or something because he's on everything that Disney does now. He's in every Disney movie that they've done in like the past decade. It's insane.
Pretty
if you like
much,
look it up, he voices every animal in every Disney movie. I don't know why he got relegated to the Animal Kingdom guy, but that's who he is now.
Just because he's just that good. He's one of those actors that it made a seamless transition from live action to voiceover work, and vice versa. Because he's just that good. I'm fine with that, and. God, it will be so great. It will be absolutely so great. And we'll wrap things up in just a little bit. Before we do that, another round of ads. We made our thoughts of the show pretty clear. I want to go over some of the production aspects of this very briefly. Tony Gilroy is the creator/showrunner for this show. He was a filmmaker who wrote the screenplays for the original Bourne trilogy, directed and wrote The Bourne Legacy, 2012, also this film called Duplicity, and was the guy who provided the rewrites and uncredited reshoots for Rogue One. Those controversial reshoots. it's interesting that they got him back to do this show, and in my opinion, it ends up being a better show than that was a film.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. I literally, this was just in research after the fact. I had no idea. Here's the thing. The Bourne stuff makes perfect sense to me in hindsight. I was just saying it was like a spy thriller. The reshoot aspect, because I mentioned how much I like the directing in that movie, now it makes me wonder how much of the directing was Rogue One director I know his name, Gareth Edwards. How much of that was Gareth Edwards directing, and how much was that his directing / writing? And it makes me question my own sanity to a certain extent. I still don't like the movie, but like I said, I did like certain aspects of it, and I'm wondering how much of that is down to Tony Gilroy. And in fairness, with that being said, looking back, he's the perfect guy to sort of run this show, and he does it really fucking well. He is not the director for all the episodes. Toby Haynes, Susanna White, Benjamin Caron are the ones who would direct him, but he is the one that's written a good chunk of all the episodes. This guy called Dan Gilroy wrote some of them. I can only assume they're related, even that was a massive coincidence. There's a guy called Stephen Schiff, Bo Willimon, and that's about it. So, a good spread. It seems like he does more writing than directing, so maybe that's a good start of, like, he's not like the Jon Favreau, Dave Filoni sort of thing, writing and directing.
Yeah.
And maybe that works. Maybe that's part of the reason why it's such a slow burn, but it pays off.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good question. Do you think it pays off?
I do. I think it stuck the landing. I definitely don't think it's like the perfect show or anything like that, but I definitely was not expecting it to ramp up the way that it did and actually managed to stick with me, because I was just kind of trudging on, and I'm like, even if it does get better, it's not going to feel like connected. But it did. It felt absolutely connected. It felt like the actions that were done in the beginning were absolute setup to what happened in the end. And it didn't feel clunky. Maybe some things felt clunky, but it definitely, not all of it, and it definitely felt smooth after a while. And I highly recommend it. It's a very good show.
It is a very good show. When it comes between a show that's good in hindsight and a show that is good throughout and as well as hindsight, I pick option B. But if you can be a show that's good in hindsight rather than bad in hindsight, or just bad from the get-go, A is perfectly serviceable. And it's interesting we talk about the slow burn, because I think a lot of people realize that when you look at the graph of critical reception by episode, the first episode is pretty well received, dip for the second, slightly better for the third, dip for the fourth, quite a big dip for the fourth one. Then from episode 5 onwards until about episode 10, it's all like 100%. All the episodes are equally rated as really, really good, right up at the same time that we mentioned the action kicks off. So I think a lot of people agree with us. Slight dip for episode 11, but it's not too bad. Still better from the first 4 episodes. And then back up to 100% at episode 12. It's been described as the best show since The Mandalorian. I have seen very little evidence to dispute that, frankly. It certainly sticks the landing better than Bad Batch did, or Book of Boba Fett, and that comes from someone who actually kind of liked the Bad Batch, but it's a show that rewards your time investment. I do wish those first couple of episodes would be better paced, better directed, or just sort of weave together better, but again, it feels like a big setup. It's a long way of setting all these characters and all these set pieces in this world building, putting in place so it can pay off later. Yeah. Because it paid off, I'd be willing to bet that that's going to continue to pay off in season 2. That's speculation, but they don't need to do the slow burn really anymore. They can kick things up to high gear, not action all the time, because that wouldn't work, but it will keep on going. I think it's so interesting that so many people think this way. That seems to be the fan reaction, as well as the the critical reaction, audience viewership has seemed to be pretty good. It's the most streamed original series across all platforms for multiple weeks throughout November and things like that. Which further brings up the question, why is this not on the front banner of the fucking Disney Plus? Seriously, when they should have figured that out. I really don't know why. But it's good. And again, this continues the trend, which I was hoping would continue, of things getting better in Star Wars. Because like Book of Boba Fett was a bit of a dip for me, honestly. And but there's stuff coming up that looks really cool. Visions was an uptick. Tales of the Jedi, I just finished watching. It was fine. It wasn't fantastic, but you know what? It was still good. And I really got into the episodes, particularly... Did you watch Tales of the Jedi?
I actually haven't yet.
I recommend you do. It is not a time sink like Andor. It is very much small, slightly disconnected, little stories that are just something like you can watch while eating your breakfast before you go to work, and then you don't need to wait a long time to see the next one. And I like that. I like that you include the big stuff and the little stuff. Because that's always what Star Wars has been about. These big, epic movies, which much smaller stories peppered in between. The problem was when they try to make the small stories as big as the big stories. That just does not work.
Yeah.
But Andor... Honestly, here's the thing, I would complain about it, but you know what? If they had made it just about Andor, if it was just about him as a character, it would feel like a small story. And they're trying to make that epic would have failed. By making it about so much more than him, it worked much better. So I'm hopeful for the future. A little bit of a wobble, but you know what? I'm pretty excited about what we're going to see out of Star Wars in the future. Hell, if nothing else, we've got an upcoming game known as Jedi Survivor.
Yes. That looks good.
That is going to be excellent. Any further thing to say about Andor or the state of Star Wars?
If they keep going in the direction of building up the universe, like I mentioned before, and getting out of sand planets, I would be a happy man. Just there's so much more to the galaxy and so much more that we've been introduced to that throughout the course of the series. Heck, there's so much they could bring from that they don't even have to create a new. They could just, if they did a Kit Fisto origin story, I would watch that with everything that I have. And that goes for pretty much any of the Jedi that were introduced during like the early days that we never got to see a lot of. And maybe they'll kill Shakti a seventh time.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, they kill Shakti a lot. Look it up.
Is it canon? Is it non-canon? You be the judge. So here's a question, Francisco. You are given a nearly unlimited budget and full carte blanche creative control, and you're told you can make a Star Wars series or a Star Wars movie. A, which one do you pick, movie or TV show? And B, what does that look like?
Ooh. Okay, I go with series.
Okay.
Jar Jar Binks origin. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you don't even fucking go there.
Actually, if I want a series, I would love to do like a smaller, kind of like Love, Death, and Robots. of just focusing a little like vignettes of different life. And
which is similar to what Tales of the Jedi is, but I mean, not quite in the same way.
A little. Some episodes lighthearted, and some episodes like so, kind of in that same vibe. I just want to see an episode of like no talking, just R2-D2 carrying on a mission by himself. Like I really imagine like there's this running joke that R2-D2 does all the leg lifting and like the early, and so I would love
MVP.
to see. Yeah, I would love to see just one episode of R2-D2 literally saving the galaxy and no one knows about it.
and Sifu by the end is just like, R2, where have you been, you lumbering lummox? Honestly, I'm the only one who gets anything done around here. And R2 just whistles, just like, fuck you. I've had a similar idea for that. What I would like to do is, if I had to do like a short, not a series or a movie, but just like a short, I would want to do a short like 15, 20-minute thing about 2 Jawas that survived the Jawa massacre by the stormtroopers in episode 4. And they have like, oh god, everyone's dead, and we've got to go on a little mini epic quest. And there's like a slightly taller Jawa that's a little bit scared, a little bit nervous, and a smaller Jawa that's way more brave and is like, blast first, ask questions later. And they have to go a little thing, and we're just like the main characters in the background or something. I don't know.
I love
that would be really cool. I'd love to see an anthology thing.
That's the planet. The planet where Jawas are from. The forest moon of Endor. That's where Endor is.
No, that's Ewoks.
That's Ewoks. That's right. Oh my god, I always combine the 2 tiny, non-specific
They've
creatures.
already done a movie about Ewoks. They did 2 movies, like Caravan of Courage and the other one.
Do you count the Christmas special as an Ewok movie?
No, because I don't think the Ewoks were in it. Those are Wookiees.
So
Get
many...
your fucking species correct, Francisco.
I'm sorry, I'm not a biologist.
One's 7 foot tall, the other's a fucking teddy bear. You don't have to be a biologist to notice height difference.
Does anybody remember the Star Wars Christmas special?
It's burned into my brain. Stir whip, swip, wah! God. Fuck God. Oh God. That is what George Lucas sees in his nightmares. He's gone on record about how much he hates that.
I think he sees Mickey Mouse in his nightmares, actually.
That is true. That's replaced it. Just like, oh, thank God, I don't see that old Wookiee watching porn anymore. I just see Mickey Mouse.
Oh boy! And he just looks up, terrified.
I'm ruining your creation. It's. I mean that I love to see that. Okay, so. To answer my own question, yes, that's the short I do. But if I had to pick between series and movie, I pick movie, and I would do, and this is really like, what's the word I'm looking? This is really not pedantic, pretentious. It's really pretentious. But I would want to do like, there's this thing in the Jedi Order called the Jedi Watchmen. Basically, they're Jedi that go out to remote planets and sort of observe planets and star systems, sort of within the community people there, but also like removed from that community. And they're just like, I'm stationed here just to keep an eye on things and make things are okay. And I'd like to see him that Jedi be stationed on that planet in like a very sort of primitive community, not really interact with them, just sort of exploring the mysteries of the Force, going through like this almost Dagobah-like untouched wilderness on a sort of like a journey of spiritual redemption, getting in touch with the Force and the mysteries of the Force, something like that, and getting sort of like this sort of, classic 80s Spielberg Amblin type level of magic and mystery. And maybe like one of the people that he's sent to look over kind of joins him on his quest to learn more about the Jedi and something like that. That's what I like to see. It's sort of a basic sort of thing. Picture like all the scenes with the Hobbit and the Gandalf character from the Rings of Power show. That was shit, except for those scenes.
Yeah,
because that was like, whoa, there's like, he's like manipulating the stars and stuff. What's going on there? And I like something like that, like an almost innocent, childlike fantasy. Less focusing on the lightsaber stuff, although that is cool, and more focusing on just like exploring the mysteries of the universe.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea. I remember in Clone Wars, I think one of my favorite episodes was the one where Anakin like meets the forces of light and dark, and there's like that conflict. And I just remember thinking, we don't even need lightsabers right now. Like, this is one of the coolest things. Like, we're just like I love big shows of power of the Force that don't have to do with combat. And I think that like things like that are just like really what makes Star Wars so interesting. And there's not enough focus in it.
The thing that always sticks with me and will stick with me to the day I die is that scene in Episode Strikes Back when Luke is just like, it's impossible to lift the X-Wing, and Yoda effortlessly and slowly and smoothly lifts the X-Wing out of the water. Not shakily. He's not grimacing or struggling or shaking. He's just whoop, whoop. And the music, the John Williams swelling and show this big epic thing. It's just a ship being telekinetically lifted. We've seen that before in other things, in Star Wars and other media. But it's the atmosphere, the moment, the character development for Luke at the same time. I don't believe it. That's why you failed.
Yeah.
Something like that. And because that's the great thing about Star Wars is we could pitch endless ideas. All of them could potentially work. Because Star Wars, the genius of Star Wars is it has the potential for so many different kinds of stories. You want to do a rogue smuggler heist story? You can do that. You want to do a fantasy wizard exploration and spiritual drama? You can do that. Something in between? You can do that. Big epic fights? You can do that. Small character moments? You can do that. It lends itself to so many different kinds of things. What I'm suggesting right now, like the wizard sort of thing, like exploring the mysteries of the universe, as much as I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I do love the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right now, you couldn't do that kind of movie in Marvel. Not really, at least not to that level.
Yeah.
You could do that in Star Wars, and people would accept it, because they have already accepted. Because Star Wars is a story, ultimately, about stories.
Yeah.
That was George Lucas's whole thing. He was inspired by Arthurian legend, Taoist philosophy, and fucking Flash Gordon. It focuses on the hero's journey. It's not about anything, which means it can be about anything. And on that note, I think we're going to end the show on that suitably pretentious note. Thank you very much, Francisco, for joining us today.
Very happy to be here. I love talking about Star Wars.
And if you enjoy the show, Capers, please tell your friends, shout it from the rooftops. And if you haven't already, go back and listen to some other super episodes. Francisco's been on the show many times before. He will be many times again. It's always nice talking with you, Francisco. And you can listen to the show on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, or all good podcast apps, or at podcapers.com. You can get in touch with us, suggest show topics, and maybe come to the show yourself, and finding us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AP2HYC. Thank you very much to Dan Harris for our logo, the lovely microphone, the red and blue 3D glasses. Those are mine. And thank you for listening. This has been Podcapers, the official podcast of A Place to Hang Your Cape. Cue the music!